The Long Way Home, Chapter 30, Uncovered. Vincent's breath came in ragged, heaving, panting gasps as he threw himself to the floor in the narrow entryway where the boarding ramp had closed behind him. His chest heaved as his heart beat its thundering tattoo against his ribs, and his claws dug into his palm as he gripped the largest of the precious data crystals. Despite his suit's cooling systems, he was hot. For he hadn't run like that in years, decades even. He'd planned on piloting the MST himself, but once he'd collapsed on board the Long Way, his legs simply refused to lift him to his feet until he'd panted away the excess body heat. To that end, the cold metal floor was becoming more and more invitingly comfortable by the passing second. With a valiant effort of will, Vincent resisted the temptation to nap where he lay when he heard the hyperdrive spool up, and dragged himself to his feet to stumble into the galley where he expected to find the chief and the girls, except of course for Tundre, who would be in the engine room. He was mildly surprised to see that Jason was absent, and with a pang of guilt realized that the boy had likely filled his seat in the cockpit. He nodded to Vi and Isis Magdalene, where they were both strapped in at the sofa, clasping hands for mutual comfort, and casting worried glances towards the short passage leading to the cockpit's hatch. Vincent thought they might have wanted to say something, but neither of them ventured. So he opened the hatch to check in with the chief and his self-appointed son. The swirling, chaotic colors of the hyperspace sea colliding with the long-ways reality bubble filled the view screen. But Vincent had little attention to spare for that commonplace spectacle. Instead, his eyes fell on the George boy, who was trembling from head to toe, trying to blink away tears welling his remaining eye, and pressing a fist against his teeth in a desperate bid to restrain his nausea and terror that he had no doubt endured during his brief escape flight. A glance towards Cadet showed the avian boy was deeply uncomfortable, unsure of what, if anything, he could do to help his clearly distraught friend. Vincent placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and rumbled as gently as his gruff voice could manage. "Easy, kid. You did good, and we're safe now. Easy. I can help you get to the toilet if you need to, Cadet blinked at the pair, and the chief shook his head weakly, but pulled his trembling fist away from his mouth to say, "I don't figure I'll puke. Good God, I hate piloting." "Jason," Cadet began softly, "why?" "Well, because if I screw up, that's it. Lights out forever. For all of us. And I just don't have the natural talent that you and Vincent have," the George boy answered between shaky breaths. "Oh," the avian boy clarified. "I mean, why do you pilot when it scares you this bad?" Because you can't be brave unless you're afraid. I can be brave to help my friends. I can do that little." Pride swelled in Vincent's chest as he said around the tightening throat, "By all of the saints and martyrs, Chief. If everyone was as brave as you, fear itself would run away from us." The kid reached up and patted Vincent's hand, where it lay on the boy's shoulder, and said, "That's awful nice of you, thanks. I don't figure I'm good to take watch." "I can do it," Cadet said, in the earnest tones of a boy trying to keep up. "You two seem tired." "Aye," Jason muttered. "Yeah," Vincent agreed. "I could use a cold shower." The chief caught Vincent's worried glance, and he said, "I'll be in the galley in a minute. I don't really trust my legs just now." Jason heard Vincent's heavy footfalls retreating from the hatch leading to the galley, and let out another shaky breath as he reminded himself that he didn't kill everybody while the yoke was in his hands. He drew in another breath and dredged up a memory of hot cocoa aboard the Among the Startides We Sing in the crew galley, listening to pop-up stories to try to stop his hands from shaking. He was interrupted, however, when the cadet said softly, "When you told me that piloting scared you, I didn't think it was like this." Jason didn't answer right away. Instead, he let out his held breath slowly before taking another deep breath to say, "Everybody is afraid of different things for different reasons." "I guess that's true. But that's not just afraid. Look at you. You're almost crying. You can't stand up." "Aye," Jason admitted solemnly. "If anything scared me like that," Cadet started hotly before quickly trading off. "You what?" Jason pressed, mainly to give himself more time to run through the calming breathing exercises that talking was inhibiting. Cadet looked away and croaked, I'd hide like a scared little hatchling." The hum of the long-way systems filled the silence between the boys with a gentle reproach, and Jason added seriously, "I know how to pilot. I don't like it. It scares the tar out of me, but I've been trained to do it since I was 6. Do you know how to fight? Have you ever trained how to shoot? Have you ever sparred hand to hand?" "No," the avian boy answered as his feathers puffed up defensively. "Then don't worry about how you don't know what to do when you haven't learned how to do any of those things." "Maybe I should learn them," Cadet muttered darkly. "Aye, they're good things to learn, but you're learning how to be an awesome pilot. Way better than I could ever be. You got natural talent, and that's plus hard work, plus how much you obviously love flying and all," Jason explained awkwardly. "Besides, we don't have a range. I figured we'd be stopping dirtside for long enough to make up for that, but I don't think that the RHCQC will work all that well for your body. I don't know enough to invent a martial art for you." "What about when we get back? What about on your home ship?" Cadet asked with fully disguised enthusiastic hope. "Big time, aye. The Wee Sing has a range that meets mil-spec standards, and she takes some passengers all across friendly space. So finding a Corvian who knows your people's martial arts wouldn't be hard, even if we don't already know somebody. I know for a fact that Nana would make it happen. The other times you've mentioned her, you made her seem like she's scary. She is, when she's mad. But she's a force of nature. Nothing really stops her when she puts her mind to something. Her and Pop-Pop, really. Folks even call them the hammer and the anvil, and you didn't hear that from me." Jason saw the recognition in his friend's eyes as he said in hushed tones, "I keep forgetting that you're a George." Jason felt his face break out into a beaming smile as he said, "Well, you don't have the name, but you're in the family now too, remember?" Jason's grin grew wider as he saw Cadet nervously gulp. His friend saw this and tried to scowl. Tried and failed. However, he still said, "You need a nap. Go tell the girls we didn't die since they think that's so funny." Jason found that he could stand and shot Cadet a grin on his way out, saying, "It's funny. You can tell on account of how I smile every time I say it." Cadet's retort of "unfunny butthead" chased Jason out as the hatch cycled close behind him, and he saw that Chandra had already come up from the engine room and Vionice's Magdalene had already unbuckled to begin preparations for dinner. "We didn't blow up," Chandra said as Jason opened his mouth to make that very same joke. "Just thought you ought to know." "Thievery!" Jason cried as he clutched his chest with his good arm. "Treacherous thievery from one I trusted best. Woe is me, and broken is mine heart." Quite satisfactorily, Chandra was forced to fight down the giggles, while Vi made no effort to do likewise. His cousin's resolve broke, however, when Isis Magdalene remarked dryly, "Dramatic." "It's like that," Chandra fought to say through her laughter. "I'm surprised it took you so long to notice." Her humor faltered a little as she ran a more critical eye over Jason and concluded, "You look like you've been holding on the triple shift. You should catch a nap." "Aye," Jason agreed with a suppressed yawn. "May I borrow the cabin? Uncle Vincent went to take a shower, so I figure he'll want to get his clothes in a minute." "Of course," Vi piped up from the kitchen end. "We don't mind, do we?" Catching the younger girl's questioning glance, Isis Magdalene hastily affirmed, "I have no objections." "Aye, we don't mind. Get some sleep, you big goof," Chandra ordered. Aye, Jason said as he plodded towards the girl's cabin. "Thank you." Cole ran over Vincent's head and down his back, carrying the heat of the sprint down the drain. He'd want a hot shower later, but could already tell that he'd be sore. But at the moment, he just wanted to cool off enough to think straight. A proper shower to ease the inevitable stiffness and to get clean would come later. In the now, he'd stepped out and began to vigorously dry himself. Getting cooled off was all well and good, but there was no reason to drip water all over the ship. He began to regret his choice to delay his hot shower in short order, as his knees popped in protest as he stepped out into the hall towards his bedroom door. He ordered his knees to stop complaining. However, they disobeyed, and other joints joined in their insubordinate grumbling. "God damn," he muttered to himself, "I'm getting old." His joints didn't quiet their protests as he stepped into his bedroom, nor when he selected some clothes, nor even when he stiffly drew them on over his aging frame. They felt slightly better after he took a moment to stretch before he strode, or rather shuffled, back to the bathroom to collect his shed gear, and then into the galley. There he was assailed by the temptation of the long ways well-worn sofa. The sense of ice sweating some bulb herbs it rendered game fat with some salt, and the mere thought of that honeyed water waiting in the fridge. He'd resisted all of these manfully, and found also that Jason had done as he'd said and gone for a nap in the girl's room. "Uncle Vincent," Chandra said from where she was assisting in the kitchen by being tall person in the room, "you look like you could use a nap too." "Yeah," Vincent said as he shook his bundle demonstratively. "But I need to put all of this in the armory right away. Then I'll get the long-ways computer working on the data crystals. Then nap time. Maybe. Might work out a bit to stay awake until I had hit the sack anyway." "Uncle Vincent," Chandra began crossly, "you won't do anybody any good by not resting after all that running and that stuff." "Tran," Vincent sighed with a subtle grin. "Getting older is funny like that. Sometimes if I try to take a nap, I feel less rested than if I hold off. Trust me. I know how to get rested by now. Well, so long as you're not pushing it, Trondre reluctantly agreed. Vincent held himself straight as he plodded carefully down the steps to the engine room, where he finally let his shoulders sag a little with a heavy sigh. He laid his burdens down on his weapons bench and unlocked and opened his armory. Then he made the sign of the cross and prayed, "Praise and thanks, O Lord, that your hand of protection was upon me in my mission. Thank you, that you cast shadows over the eyes of my enemies, that you put wind under my feet, that you made the way clear. Thank you, O Lord, that your mighty hand did preserve me for the work that you have ordained I do for these children. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen." The long way filled his ears with a constant comforting drone as he began to carefully, reverently stow his tools of his deadly trade in their proper places, each nestled into its own foam cutout, or hanging hook, or, in the case of the adaptive canvas suit, folded and zipped into a soft-sided box, until he reached the combat knife he'd replaced Carl's old hunting knife with. The thing felt heavy, almost alien in his hands, and as he nestled into the foam cutout, he wondered aloud, "What will I do when I get back? I can't do this work, bloody work, and be dad to cadet. I don't think I can be the huntsman and the father at once. But what else am I good for?" The knife and his companions offered him no answer, and he closed his armory with another heavy sigh and picked up one of the data crystals as the long way droned her hum encouragingly at him. The old man cast his mind back to the discussion he had with Chief about options a while ago, and wondered whether the boys Grand could find something for a worn-out pirate hunter to do on the big passenger liner. He let out another heavy sigh and shook his head to banish the thought for later consideration, to focus on the problem at hand. And by chance, his gaze fell on Trondre's tiny little workbench, where the captured enemy yoke had been disassembled, and from its parts she had made an adapter for the alien data crystal in anticipation of his success. A smile broke across his old man's face as he strode over to the device and he muttered softly, "Clever, Tran, and thanks for the vote of confidence." Vincent popped the crystal into the socket, rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and climbed back into the galley with praise with Trondre on his lips. One dinner, one hot shower, and one good night by his own necessarily odd schedule sleep later, and Vincent was on his first wash shift of the day, scrolling through what information that his trusty ship's computer had passed into something comprehensible so far. He had drawn his conclusions already. He knew what to look for and how to search for it. Among all the mundane reports of people having their very minds robbed of the dark purposes of the controllers, the detailing of horrific experimentation young children were being subjected to, and other stomach-churning facts spelled out in frank, clinical language, was something that drew Vincent's lips back in a hateful, infuriated snarl, and his eyes narrowed with urgent purpose. In the meanwhile, Jason was well rested and had a mind to cast off his plastic splint and do some low-impact lifting in the weight room. However, as he adjusted the gravity within the weight room to the Terra standard, Isis Magdalene joined him. He let out a broad grin spread across his face as he took in her downcast eyes and nervous way she gripped her left elbow horn with her right hand behind her back. "Why, yes, I'd love to spot you. Do you already know what lifts you want to do?" he said without preamble, guessing at what she was apprehensive about. "What? Oh, indeed. I should like your advice upon lifting weights. I admit I'd been setting the room to heavy world standard and simply running upon the treadmill." "That's not really good for us heavy wielders on a ship geared for light wielders, you know," Jason mildly scolded with a raised eyebrow. "I knew not, for I am not a well-traveled, or I was not so before. Yet this is not what I desired to speak of." "I was going to do some free weights to start off with," Jason said as he made a fist and flexed his arm experimentally, and was pleased by the absence of pain. "On account of the recovering and all, you can just copy my motions, and I'll keep an eye on you in the mirror, and we can chit-chat about whatever you like." Isis Magdalene nodded gravely and fought to look Jason in the eye to say, "This is a good plan. Please show me the first whatever it is called." Jason picked up a pair of 30-pound barbells and began to demonstrate standing curls, first left, then right, as he said. "You should probably start with 5s if you're new to lifting, just to get the form down, but this one's pretty easy." He watched in the mirror as the sanguine-skinned girl did as he suggested and began to copy him hesitantly in silence before she abruptly began. "The surprise of the poem is spoiled, and its progress is stalled in any case. Yet I wish to show you some gratitude." "There is no debt," Jason said between curls, "but I appreciate your kind words." "I realize that attempted to repay you is an exercise in futility," she replied primly. Yet Chandra gave into my hands a cunning sewing machine, and I have been making good use of it as I can. Aye, that sling was a canny idea, comfortable too. Thank you, she said, and faltered for a beat before rushing ahead. I wish to know whether you should like to cover your missing eye with a patch of some sort. Jason let his gaze fall to the hollow space that used to hold a match to his remaining sapphire blue eye, and thought. At length he asked, Does looking at it bother you? Somewhat, she answered, quietly, as she forgot to continue her set of calls. I'm reminded that it was the price you paid to save my life. I know that you said that I am not to blame, yet I sorrow that you sacrificed so much. I see. That's a relief, Jason said as he replaced the barbells and picked up a pair of 40-pound ones. You'll want heavier weights for this one, since your legs are stronger. Here, watch. Isis Magdalene's eyes widened with shock as she watched Jason demonstrate lunges until she asked, Why is this a relief? I was worried that I was a hideous to gaze upon with my horrific disfigurement, Jason said in a near-perfect flippant deadpan. A short bark of laughter escaped the nascent noblewoman, quickly followed by the clatter of her dropped barbells as she covered her mouth in shocked embarrassment. Once she'd recovered, she'd asked with heated affront, Is that really something to jest over? It's my missing eye, Jason answered wryly. I figure I get to decide if I am allowed to joke about it. Yet, I came not to be mocked, and I am not mocking you, Jason said with a smirk. I told a joke to make you laugh, and it worked. You are incorrigible. Aye, Jason agreed. I figure an eye patch could look nice. And if looking at that doesn't make you want to cry, hey-ho, that's a bonus. Isis Magdalene shifted from one foot to another and began haltingly. At first, I thought to embroider what some call a chain-breaker's banner on the others called the two-star banner upon it. But I recalled that using rank insignia that matches too closely to your military is considered improper. You sound like you already made one, Jason said, feeling the knurled grips of his barbells tug at his fingertips as he laid them on the deck to face Isis Magdalene. He tried to make his shoulders look relaxed, and didn't let his arms cross in front of himself as he leveled an expectant gaze at the nervous girl. I had taken the liberty, for the project was surprisingly complex and amused me greatly. I did think that it should be a shame if it did not meet your liking, yet she said, and trailed off before she retrieved from within the folds of her dress a soft black eye patch with a stark cross between two halves of the sundered altar embroidered in white and gold thread, respectively. This symbol has some connection with the tale of your ancestor. However, among my people, the sundered altar is borne by those who have the need to be mighty in courage and wisdom, more mighty than was commanded by the first emperor unchained, and by his successors in any case. By then, Jason had realized that the girl was rambling, filling the quiet moment with words so that the denial she feared couldn't be spoken. Therefore, he stepped to her, took the proffered gift up, and put it on. She fell silent as he did so. Thus, he told her soberly, To Catholics, St. Aidan's cross is a symbol of courage, too. Courage, endurance, and a certain hope of victory over the darkness. Thank you. You cut a rather dashing figure, Isis Magdalene weakly said, with a relieved smile. That's good, Jason retorted dryly. Now that my hideous disfigurement is hidden, incorrigible, she sighed, as she rolled her eyes. Come on, Jason pressed. It's important for us to keep our muscles from atrophying. Oh, yes, she said, with an abrupt candor, before she returned to her dropping barbells to their places, took up heavier ones, and began to imitate Jason's form as he demonstrated lunges again. Vincent did not tell his young crew the dreadful news right away. Instead, he let everybody get a full day of night's rest within the intimate confines of the Longways embrace. Then he did what was becoming something of a habit when he had bad news. He called a meeting. Mai's rounded ears flicked nervously, and her tail twitched like she had an urge to stab it against the bench where she sat at the dinette. Cadet preened in the transparent show of unconcerned bravado, spoiled mainly by the sound of his talons tapping on the floor with nervous rapidity. Chandra leaned up against her cousin and fidgeted with all four hands and cast worried glances to all her friends around the table. Isis Magdalene kept her composure by a subtle but practiced effort, given away by the tight grip she held on the folds of her dress beneath the table. Jason alone among all the children was calm, and Vincent thought that was down to the boy's tendency to accept the world as it came to him, and the fight that it entailed. The old man heavily slid into the seat beside Cadet and began, Bad news. Aye, Jason said with his usual sober acceptance. I figured. Chandra seized her cousin's hand and seemed to draw strength from her grip. Cadet clicked his beak, Vi crowded onto Jason's other side, and Isis Magdalene bit the inside of her cheek. Vincent resisted the urge to shake his head at the trouble these good kids found themselves in with him, and told them, "We don't have as much time as I thought. Before the mission, I had guessed that the Grub controllers were planning on invading Terran and friendly space, and it turns out that I was right. They're mobilizing." A collective gasp of horror ran around the table, while Jason narrowed his eye and asked, "How soon will they move?" 6 months, Vincent said flatly. "So long as the long way translated their measurements correctly. 6 months, and we still have 9 months of our fast-track schedule." Jason tapped the table and said, "If we ride the currents for 2-month trips, we can do it. It'll mean we don't get so many stops to resupply, but seconds add up into minutes, minutes to hours, hours to days, and so on." Vincent sighed sorrowfully. "We still have precious little time to gather supplies on planets," Isis Magdalene softly added. "We're going to have to eat the canned stuff, aren't we?" Cadet sniped, but Vincent knew that food was far from his main concern. "We can handle it," Tundre said softly. "It's a hard sprint, but the long way is a hardy ship. She has what it takes." "It's not the ship I'm worried about," Vincent admitted. "That kind of sailing isn't going to be easy on you guys."
Well, the thing is, if you don't warn anybody, it'll be a surprise attack, right?"
Vi haltingly asked. "Aye," Vincent agreed seriously. "But Tran's right. Heave-ho all together. We can handle it. We can, because we have to." Vincent said a desperate silent prayer up that the boy was right, as the long way added the resolute hum of her systems and cast their grim faces in the warm light of her oil lamp imitation LEDs. End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.